Is being an Uber driver and a Lyft driver worth it in 2023? In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 things you have to consider when determining is it worth it to drive or not worth it to drive. Number 1, your location. Longtime listeners of this channel know exactly what I'm about to say, but in case you didn't know, the number 1 factor that determines how much money you can make as a driver is your location. And the big thing is that depending on your location, it can be worth it or in some cases not worth it at all. This is a picture from Rideshare. They do a lot of ride sharing surveys from 2018. So I know this was a while ago, but this just shows that depending on your location, you can either make a good amount per hour, for example, or a bad amount per hour. And this is kind of unfortunate depending on the layout of your city, the economics, just everything considered. In a good amount of cases, your location is actually the make or break if it's worth it or not. If you're in a great location like San Francisco or Vegas, for example, that's going to be huge and it probably is worth it to drive. But if you're in a bad location, let's say an obscure part of Ohio or Florida, for example, it might not be worth it at all and you're wasting your time. Number 2, the car situation. Now, of course, you need a car to drive. I know it's simple to say, and if you do have your own car, and let's say it does qualify for Uber and Lyft, it is probably worth it. And remember too, you can always sign up and drive, and let's say after a few rides, you're like, you know what, it's not for me, no big deal, you don't have to drive again. Or you could do it and be like, you know what, I love this, I'm gonna keep driving. So if you do have your own car, more likely than not, if you're considering it, it is worth it to drive and just to test it out, see if you like it or not, see what the money is like. However, and this is a bit bittersweet, you can rent a car. Let's say your car doesn't qualify, or let's say you don't have a car, you can rent one through Uber and Lyft. It's about $200 to $300 a week. Now to some people, let's say if you want to drive full time, they might be like, hey, that's worth it. I'm definitely going to rent a car because I can drive as much as I want and make as much money as I want. However, on the flip side, let's say you have a 9-to-5 job and you can only drive here and there on the weekends. You can only drive a limited amount of hours. Well, it might not be worth it, right? Like let's say you spend $300 a week to rent a car, and let's say in 1 week you make $290 driving. On one end, yeah, you made $290, but in the grand scheme of things, you technically made or lost $10. Once you pay to rent a car, you're in the hole. If you have to rent a car and you can't drive that much, it probably isn't worth it. But let's say if you do want to rent a car and you're gonna be going pretty much all in on it, it probably is worth it. Number 3, the worker legal status. This is constantly changing. And in addition, it depends city to city and state to state. And what I'm talking about is, are you an independent contractor or employee? This heavily affects if it's worth it to drive because each one has its pros and cons. And depending on your situation, depending on how it's classified or not, it may be worth it or not. For example, here in California, we had Prop 22, which kept drivers as independent contractors. And in addition to that, they added a bunch of new clauses. For example, after Prop 22, drivers now have a minimum hourly guarantee. So let's say you go out and drive here, let's say in California, and you only make $3. Let's say it's a horrible hour, you only make $3 on a very short ride, they will still bump you up to a minimum hourly guarantee. That's pretty awesome. So in my opinion, after Prop 22, even though drivers stayed as independent contractors, it's now more worth it to drive here in California than it was before. This is something I highly suggest doing research on. Again, it varies city to city and state to state, and this is constantly changing. I mean, this has always been the biggest battle when it comes to Uber and Lyft is, are you an independent contractor or an employee? But this can heavily determine, is it worth it or not? Number 4, part-time versus full-time. This gets really interesting. Now, like I said, your location is the number 1 factor that determines how much money you can make for numerous different reasons. And one unique thing I've seen on this channel is I have some drivers commenting saying, hey Mark, I hate Lyft and Uber, you can't make any money, Lyft and Uber sucks, I hate them. But then you have other people saying, hey, I love Lyft and Uber, I love driving, I make really, really good money. I've met some drivers, especially when I travel, who make insane money. One driver in Austin, Texas told me he makes 6 figures a year, over 100K driving, and he absolutely loves driving. And there's a lot of factors to determine this. So I always suggest start off part-time. Just see if you like it or not, what the money's like, and then heavily consider or not to go into full-time. For me personally, when I first started driving part-time, it was worth it. I was making great money, I could balance my schedule, and I was like, wow, I'm making a good hourly rate. However, one big thing I didn't really completely think about is I was driving mainly during the peak hours, morning and evening commutes Friday and Saturday nights. Yeah, there's some other hours here and there, but those are the big ones you're gonna make the most amount of money. And I'd say on an average week, there's about 20-ish hours that are the peak hours where you can make a lot of money. So I remember thinking like, wow, it's pretty awesome driving part-time. Why not try full-time? The second I started driving full-time, I immediately hated it because after those 20 peak hours, in non-peak hours, I was pretty much making nothing. I was making horrible money. Now, this was back in Boston. We did not have a minimum hourly guarantee. Maybe it might be more worth it here in California because of that, like I said before, but being honest, it was worth it driving part-time. It was not worth it driving full-time. There's a lot of factors to this, but in some cases, it's worth it to drive part-time, not worth it to drive full-time. However, this may be the opposite. In some cases, especially depending on Uber bonuses and Lyft bonuses, those are a huge secret to make a lot of money. You actually might make significantly more money driving full-time, not just because of the hours you're driving, but because you're hitting all these bonuses and metrics that really skyrocket your income. Number 5, the timing. This is absolutely vital because as you can imagine, if you're gonna be driving in bad hours, you're not gonna make that much money. And in addition, remember, when it comes to being an Uber driver and a Lyft driver, it's bittersweet because on one end, you are your own boss. As most people know, you can drive whenever you want. But on the other end, you're your own boss. And let's say if you're not self-motivated, let's say when you drive are not the best hours, you don't even really drive that much, you might not make that much money. And especially, let's say if you're renting a car or whatever, it might not be worth it at all. Let's say you have a very crazy schedule and you can only drive Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to, 4 p.m., for example. Well, those are probably the worst hours to drive. I gotta be honest. In that case, it might not be worth it. However, like I said before, as a huge asterisk on this, it does depend on your location. Here in California, like I've said, like you get almost no rides, they still at least bump you up to that minimum hourly guarantee. So that's pretty awesome. Until this changes, let's say it's gonna be a federal thing, it's tough to say. If your city does not have a minimum hourly guarantee and you can only drive during the non-peak hours, it's probably not worth it at all. And now, a bonus point when it comes to is it worth it or not, consider delivery driving. Now, I have to be honest, I personally prefer Uber and Lyft to Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever. I gotta be honest and like to be very transparent in all my videos. However, this is a great option. I know a lot of people who love doing delivery driving. There's a lot of pros and cons to Uber and Lyft, and there's a lot of pros and cons to DoorDash, Uber Eats, etc., etc. The reason though why I want to bring this up is one, you have flexible hours. I find for a lot of people when looking at Uber and Lyft, the number one reason they want to go into it is it's flexible. You can easily have Uber and Lyft and Uber Eats and DoorDash as a secondary job to your primary job. I mean, I gotta be honest when I say that it might be the best secondary job or side source of income, period. You can work whenever you want. In addition, the barrier to entry is a lot lower for being a delivery driver, both in the age, your vehicle as well. I remember talking to one of my friends who said, hey Mark, I wanna drive, but I only have a 2-door vehicle. Unfortunately, my car does not qualify for Uber or Lyft. I said, hey, well, you could still drive for Uber Eats or DoorDash. And so if you are looking to drive for Uber and Lyft and you're trying to weigh it out watching this video being like, well, I just don't know if it's worth it or not, don't rule out delivery driving because in some cases, depending on your situation, you may be like, you know what? Delivery driving is actually way more worth it than regular Uber and Lyft, given by situation, your car situation. In addition, you can also do Uber Eats on a bike or on a scooter or even on foot. Like say if you're in the city, you can walk to the person's place. Again, you can get your workout in if you're on a bicycle, however you want to do it.